What you're about to see isn't just another fiery floor speech. It's a California lawmaker standing up in real time and tearing apart the GOP's entire playbook, exposing exactly how they twist the rules to keep power they can't win honestly. Bryan doesn't just call out hypocrisy, he lays bare the authoritarian tactics being used right now, from gerrymandering voters out of existence to weaponizing investigations against opponents. And the best part, he does it right to their faces without flinching. This isn't about California alone. It's a window into a much bigger battle for democracy itself, and the cracks are starting to show.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. I rise in strong support of ACA 8. And like at least 2/3 of you in this room, I read the constitutional amendment, which makes it very clear that we are not approving any maps in this body. We are giving the voters the decision, something that isn't happening in Texas. And even doing that was something we had to debate fiercely. California's responsibility to Californians and Californians' responsibility to this country. We didn't want to be in this situation. The authoritarian in the White House put us in this situation when he used House Republicans in Texas to disenfranchise vulnerable people. After those maps in Texas are approved, a Latino voice in Texas is worth 1/3 of the representation as a white voice. A black voter in Texas is worth 1/5 of the representation of a white voter in Texas. I didn't say 3/5. There was no compromise. I said 1/5. That is the kind of gerrymandering, that is the kind of theft that they are perpetuating. And we can't just sit by and let it happen. We won't just sit by and let it happen. But that doesn't mean we lose ourselves. That's why when I was chair of the Elections Committee, I authored an update to the Fair Maps Act that prevented incumbency from being a consideration in map drawing, and every single Republican on this floor voted against it. That's why I authored legislation calling for independent redistricting commissions on school boards and counties and special districts all throughout the state, and every Republican in this House voted against it. How convenient to switch your tone when you are now on the line. When we are stepping up and speaking the way Californians deserve for us to stand up and fight, because we are tired of being the punching bag of this country. When we freely give, when North Carolina is on fire, we show up. When a hurricane hits Florida, we show up. When Texas is flooding, we show up. We don't wait for Canada and Mexico to show up first, like Texas did supporting Los Angeles this year. We come immediately. When we pay $80 billion more in federal taxes than we get back, we don't complain. We know our role is to support others. And when the biggest disaster to ever hit our state hits and we ask for a portion of our own dollars back and you withhold it, we have to change our tone. We have to step up, because your silence is deafening. When they took health care and food and veterans assistance, and they made it harder for students to go to college, and they put trillions of dollars in national debt, and you said nothing. That forced us to step into the void. When they held our #1 public university hostage for $1 billion of California tax dollars, and you have said nothing, we had to step into that void. You talk about fighting fire with fire and how we shouldn't do that, while simultaneously a member of your own caucus just yesterday asked the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi to investigate us criminally. I took that personally, that you didn't say anything. We are not just going to sit by and let our democracy crumble. Here in California, we're standing on business.
Bryan rose to speak in support of ACA 8, a constitutional amendment in California designed to give the people, not politicians, the final says on new district maps. On the surface, it's a simple principle: let voters decide. No backroom deals, no partisan manipulation, no insiders drawing lines to benefit themselves, just pure democracy. And yet Bryan had to stand there defending this idea against Republicans who couldn't even hide their outrage. Think about that for a second. One party is working to empower voters, the other is doing everything possible to silence them. And Bryan called it out in a way that couldn't be ignored, because this wasn't happening in a vacuum. He reminded everyone that in Texas the opposite is true. Instead of empowering citizens, Republicans there pushed through maps so blatantly unfair they made a Latino voice worth 1/3 of a white voice and a black vote worth just 1/5. That's not representation, that's political theft. Bryan didn't mince words and he didn't sugarcoat it. He made it clear this is the kind of gerrymandering designed to strip communities of power, and by contrasting California's push to hand authority back to the people with Texas' brazen attempt to erase it, he forced everyone in that chamber to confront the reality of what's happening. But he wasn't finished, because then came the receipts. Bryan reminded Republicans that when he chaired the Elections Committee he authored updates to the Fair Maps Act, updates specifically written to prevent incumbents from protecting their own seats. Every single Republican voted against it. He pushed for independent redistricting commissions at the local level, school boards, counties, special districts to remove political influence from the process, and every single Republican voted against that too. It was crystal clear when the reforms would actually create fairness they opposed them. When the process worked for them they embraced it. But now when the tables turn and they lose control, suddenly they cry foul and pretend to care about fairness. That's not principle, that's hypocrisy. Bryan's words stung because they were backed by proof. He could stand there and list the bills, the votes, the paper trail. And the truth was undeniable. Republicans had the chance to support fairness and chose not to. They can't erase their record. They can't pretend it didn't happen. And Bryan made sure everyone watching understood exactly how empty their outrage was. But what makes his speech even more powerful is that he didn't stop at exposing hypocrisy. He tied it all to a bigger national picture. He reminded his colleagues that California isn't just another state in the Union. Time after time, when disaster strikes elsewhere, California steps up. Wildfires in North Carolina, hurricanes in Florida, flooding in Texas, California is always there. No hesitation, no complaints. The state pays billions more in federal taxes than it ever gets back, and still, it shows up for the rest of the country. Yet when California faces its own crises, when it needs federal dollars in return, it's met with silence, or worse, outright obstruction from Republicans in Washington. Bryan wasn't afraid to say it plainly: your silence is deafening. You'll take California's resources, you'll take its tax dollars, but when it needs support, you withhold it, and then dare to lecture about fairness. That was a gut punch because it's true, and he said it directly. And then he exposed the next move in the authoritarian playbook. When Republicans realized they couldn't win the debate over ACA 8, they didn't argue harder or make a better case. Instead, they demanded the Attorney General open a criminal investigation into the Democrats pushing it. Think about how insane that is. You disagree with legislation that hands power to the voters, so your response is to threaten your opponents with criminal prosecution. That's not politics, that's intimidation. That's a tactic designed to scare opponents into silence, to make anyone who challenges you think twice before speaking up. Bryan nailed it when he said this wasn't a debate anymore, it was a threat. And threats like that reveal the true game plan. It's about shutting down disagreement altogether. It's about criminalizing dissent. It's a tantrum dressed up as strategy, the political equivalent of flipping the board over because you're losing. The hypocrisy of it all is staggering. Republicans who voted against every reform that would have made maps fair now want to claim they're champions of fairness. Their definition of fairness is simple: whatever keeps them in power. If the system benefits them, it's sacred. If it doesn't, it's corrupt. Bryan called it what it is: manipulation, and he did it with receipts that can't be argued away. You can't vote no on independent commissions, no on fair maps, no on reforms, and then turn around and pretend to be shocked when someone else steps up to do the work you refuse to do. That kind of selective outrage doesn't deserve respect. It deserves to be laughed out of the room. But the brilliance of Bryan's speech is that he didn't leave it at California politics. He connected it to the much larger struggle playing out across the country. What's happening in California is directly tied to what's happening in Texas, in North Carolina, in states where gerrymandering and voter suppression have reached staggering levels. California didn't choose this fight, it was dragged into it because Republicans elsewhere are rigging the system, and when the GOP in California stays silent about it, or worse, joins in with attacks on democracy at home, they become complicit. Bryan's point couldn't have been clearer. You can't stand by while your party erases voters of color in Texas and then act outraged when Californians try to defend democracy. You don't get to light the fire and then complain when someone brings a fire extinguisher. This is why Bryan's speech matters far beyond California's borders. It's not just about maps, or one amendment, or one statehouse fight. It's about a coordinated nationwide assault on democracy. The GOP knows it can't win with ideas, so it's turning to intimidation, manipulation and suppression. Bryan exposed that playbook in broad daylight, and he did it with the kind of passion that cuts through the noise. His words remind us that democracy isn't something you can take for granted, it has to be defended every single day. And in that chamber, on that floor, he showed exactly what that defense looks like. So when you hear Republicans complain about fairness, remember Bryan's receipts. Remember their record. Remember that when they had the chance to support fairness they said no, and when they lost control of the process they cried corruption and demanded criminal probes. That's not leadership, that's desperation, and it tells you everything you need to know about where their priorities truly lie. This fight is bigger than one amendment, bigger than California, bigger than one fiery speech. It's about whether we let intimidation and hypocrisy define our politics, or whether we demand something better. Bryan's words are a warning, but also a challenge. If they can try to criminalize disagreement here, what's stopping them from trying it everywhere? That's the question all of us need to think about. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and while you're there don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more. I appreciate you all and I'll see you in the next one.